Hello everyone, hope this video finds you well. The purpose of today's video is to review how to use Maono's routing center for the PS22 audio interface. If you're looking for information on the audio interface itself, I have that in a completely separate video. I'll have it linked down below, but that's where I do my own review on the actual hardware, the interface itself, and go over my personal thoughts, its features, things like that. If you're looking for that kind of information, that video will be linked below. This video is going to be dedicated to the routing software. Now, I am not a representative of Maono. They have not trained me how to use this. I'm just someone who they sent it to me to review. I was incredibly confused but optimistic about their routing center. I had to kind of figure things out on my own and figured if I was getting really confused, and I consider myself a rather tech-savvy person, then a lot of other people are probably also going to be confused. So I might as well make a resource going over what I was able to teach myself. Now, I did send a few messages out to Maono through a few different avenues, and asking questions, trying to clarify certain things that I found confusing. Their answers were not satisfactory, kind of at all. So again, why I'm making this video, I don't really trust that Maono is going to be able to properly explain it nearly as well as I probably will. No shade on Maono. I think they do their best. I just also understand that if I was very confused and they weren't that helpful to me, then a lot of people who are buying their product hoping to use this routing software might also be confused. So I'm going to be ignoring the iOS stuff. I don't have a phone or second device that can utilize this properly, so I am going to be fully admitted here. I don't have any experience using this system, like that part of it. So if you're here looking for help on your mobile device stuff, I'm not your guy, unfortunately, but if you're looking for any other computer-based use, I should be able to help you out here. So on the left over here, you have various inputs. So you have your microphone 1 and 2. So for those of you who, I'm sure you guys all know, because if you're watching this video, you probably are looking at or have already bought the PS22. There's 2 microphone inputs. I have my microphone plugged into the first one, which is the top bar here. I do have an XLR splitter with me though, so if I were to plug this into both spots, it should, in theory, yeah, there we go. I don't have the gain set perfectly to match, but now that I'm plugged into both units, it is showing up in both bars here. I believe for the mic input, it's the top is left, the bottom is right, unless you're doing mono stuff. It's that part, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, it's a little confusing throughout the rest of this, so I just say the top is the left input, the bottom is the right input on the interface. I'm going to unplug the second one now, because I'm recording this in OBS, and I have it down mixed to mono, so it's not going to matter if I'm using left or right, but that's the 1, 2. 1 is up top, 2 is down below. Then you have virtual channel in 1, 2. You have virtual channel in 3, 4, and then you have your loop back. Now, a lot of interfaces will have just the mic inputs and the loopback. Some other interfaces also have virtual channels alongside with that. But what you want to know is that the left side is your inputs. So obviously the top one is your microphone, the bottom one's your loopback if you're setting things to go to loopback. But for virtual channels and your loopback, you can actually, when opening up a program, set the input of that audio to be one of these channels. Then over here you have your outputs, where this one is just your headphone out. Then you have the out for virtual channel 1, 2, virtual channel 3, 4, and your loopback once again. It gets a little confusing ins and outs when trying to use this with third-party programs, and I'll go over that in a moment. But what you essentially need to know is that you can assign various programs to different virtual channels. And then if you want those to be heard in the outputs, let's say I have something associated. Let's start with my microphone because that's what's plugged in right now. If I wanted to have a mono source going out to my headphone out or virtual out 1, 2, I would do here and here. So plugging things into the routing center, it is based in stereo. So there's, for each output, there is a left and a right column for input 1, input 2. So now that, if you see, now that I have left and right plugged in the routing software, now on the HP out, like the headphone out 1, 2, it is now giving that signal there as well. So that's going to be what's directly plugged in. Like if you plug your headset into the front of the interface with the provided adapter jack, or if you have headphones that already have that. Like for example, I have a pair of Sennheiser headphones that came with the same type of adapter, so I just plugged that right in. It's the same exact thing. The HP out is what's being fed through there. Now, I can also extend this across the whole bar, as you see. The more I'm talking, my voice and my microphone's input is now being fed to all of these outputs. This can also be extended to other virtual channels. So if I wanted to, for example, pull up Spotify, if I wanted some Stream Beats by Harris Heller to be playing through virtual channel 1, 2, for example, I would then go to my Windows settings, my sound settings specifically. Depending on which Windows you're using, 10 or 11, you might get to this in a slightly different way, but where I'm in 10 right now, if I'm in my sound settings and then scroll down and go to the advanced sound options of app volume and device preferences, it will then show my active programs, and I can choose an input and output for the audio of these programs. What I'm going to do is go down to, or perhaps I have to play a little bit of here first. So let me mute this just to, yeah, there we go. Okay, so Spotify is now up. I have Spotify set to my Maono virtual channel out 1, 2. Virtual channel out is what is specifically needed for it to work on in. Again, this is part of the confusion that you could be getting. So if you see I set the in to be virtual channel 1, 2, well, all of a sudden, while this stays default, there may be a little bit of confusion where you're not sure if what you actually are looking for is correct. Like, well, in, it's not correct. Why isn't it working? Well, it's because you have to actually choose the output instead of the input. Input can be back to default, and it'll still work. So now if I wanted to make the virtual channel 1, 2 only be Stream Beats, now it's only Stream Beats. So my microphone is not there now, and let's see, yeah, so, and sorry, I was about to, it was dormant for a second, so I was just going to double check to make sure Spotify didn't pause for some reason, but we're good here. So now, as you guys can see, my microphone is picked up on everything else, but it's not picked up on virtual out 1, 2. That one is solely Spotify, or whatever mass of programs I have selected as the output being virtual channel 1, 2. You can do more than one. You can assign more than one program to these virtual channels. Of course, up here it can only be your microphone, but for the rest, it's kind of up to you to decide if you're only doing one thing or if you're doing a bunch of things. What you can also do is you can save presets. So I have, all right, we overrode that. So now that just overwritten our test routing preset. So now if I wanted to do a new preset, let's call it test 2, it gives us a complete blank slate. It's obviously, it keeps what inputs are going through. Let's pause Spotify for now. So it gives us a clean slate where we can then once again start to assign certain things. So if I wanted a preset that was for streaming, or a preset that was for content creation, or a preset that was for specific types of content creation, like certain types of videos that I was making, like for example, maybe one utilizes music a little more, one utilize, or whatever may have you. These presets, if I then save this right here, So now test test will have a channel that is dedicated to just my virtual channel 1, 2, and test 2 doesn't have that at all. It's only my microphone's input. Um, so that way, if you were routing out into OBS, recording from virtual output 1, 2, also virtual output 3, 4, for example, and you don't have to then reformat your routing in other programs to record or to reprioritize what's being recorded. You can do that all from in here, which I do think is pretty cool. Stepping away from the actual routing itself, if you look into the bottom right corner here, you see your different settings. So for example, I have my sample rate set to 48 kilohertz and my buffer size is 64. It also tells me what my input and output latency is and whether it's active or not. I can click over here to get a pop-up that then lets me change the sample rate and buffer size. One thing that I'm a little peeved about, and a product improvement suggestion I have sent over to Maono, is that it shows you a bunch of different possible sample rates and buffer sizes that are not compatible with each other. So for example, if I were to go to like a 96 kilohertz sample rate, I'm not gonna mess with this right now because I'm recording, but like because I'm using this interface specifically to record right now, so I'm not going to mess with its settings while recording. But if I were to go to 96 kilohertz and then choose 2048 samples, obviously those two aren't compatible, and it'll force change the setting to a different, more compatible sample size. Something that I have suggested to Maono is just don't display incompatible sample sizes or buffer sizes for certain sample rates. Like if I'm on 48 kilohertz, if you have a range of only 16 to 128 samples you should realistically be using, don't show 8 samples. Don't show 512 samples, 1024. If you're going to force me off of those choices anyways, just don't let me choose them in the first place. Then safe mode, it changes your output latency from 1.5 to 3.5. The only other thing in the actual routing software itself that I want to go over is the controls down here. For me personally, it was rather vague, and I was able to get a good explanation from Maono on what specifically these all do. So obviously the sliders will change the output volume. It sets you at just 100% volume or 0 dB, like unaltered from your input. If this link is highlighted, it means that the left and right are being adjusted equally. So if you click that, you can unlink them, and then if you wanted your right ear to be stronger than your left or vice versa, you can mess with the levels separately. If you do relink, it links them back to, I believe, the highest setting. So it just linked right to left here. If I go down, no, so it links your right ear to your left ear, or right output to your left. Hitting the 0 decibel will reset both back to 100, regardless of if you're linked or not. So if I unlinked, did this, and then did that, it still puts both back to 100. So it essentially just resets things. And then the mute button obviously just mutes the entire output, like that entire column, regardless of what's activated or not. That is essentially the main points in utilizing the routing center, but it does get a little interesting when you go to use it with third parties. So let me minimize those real quick. So for example, if I want to create in OBS a new input, let's go to audio output capture. Just create new, doesn't really matter. I then get like Maono's virtual channel out 1, 2. I get the headphone out 1, 2. I get the loop back, and I get the virtual out 3, 4. So let's choose the headphone out, just as one to utilize. So again, we're doing, it's capturing my microphone here. No, it is not. No, because this is separately for my mic that I already had set up. So if we go back to properties, so the headphone out just was not taking here. Interesting. So let's go then to virtual channel out 1, 2 instead. It's still not doing anything. So let's perhaps try something different. Let's try audio input capture. So let's hit OK. And we've got virtual channel in 1, 2, virtual channel in 3, 4, mic in 1, 2, and loop back. So let's do, well, I feel like mic is going to be an obvious winner for us. So let's do that. Let's go in. All right. So it is doing the same exact thing for us, except ironically, the new audio input capture is louder than the microphone capture that we've already set up. So I'm going to mute that just so it doesn't interfere with the actual recording of this video, and we can still see the levels going there. So that was a little interesting, running into that issue where it should have been doing our outputs, but it wasn't capture because we have our microphone set to those. Let me then start playing here again. Let's go to let's do virtual channel out 1, 2 again. I know we essentially just recreated test. Oh, we didn't save it, so let's just go back to test then. All right. So now the audio output capture is working. So it wasn't capturing our microphone, but it was capturing the virtual out once it was actually doing something other than our microphone. So there we go. Hi, post-production me coming in to clarify something in this moment. What actually happened was the audio output capture was recording the virtual channel input. In the moment, I didn't realize that it was picking up the music in OBS before actually assigning it to virtual channel out 1, 2. So it's another example of it being a little confusing in the wording, where I am choosing an output, but it's taking the input from that virtual channel. Just like with assigning things in Windows settings, the input and the output isn't what's lining up here, which can cause added confusion. So it is interesting that it was not, if I do this, it's still just ignoring my microphone input in this output. And so maybe that's what it was. Maybe if it's doing an output, it is specifically for capturing things that are not my microphone, but it's giving me options for, I don't know. Post-production me once again coming in just to, again, hit the hammer home on the fact that despite OBS saying that I was taking the virtual channel out 1, 2, it was taking the audio from the virtual channel in 1, 2. So I don't believe that this is an OBS thing. I think it lies more with Maono, but that explains why it's not taking my microphone, because it's truly not taking that output channel. It's taking the input channel, just to hit that home again. So for our next section, I have turned on virtual channel in 1, 2, and actually let's go through and just get all this done, because there's something I want to show you about working in DAWs that are specific for like the virtual channel outs and the loop back here. So just before we go into things, I just want to establish that we're currently receiving our music from Spotify through virtual channel in 1, 2, and we have the inputs for virtual channel in 1, 2, virtual channel in 3, 4, and loopback 1, 2 turned on for all of our outs that are not our headphone out. So I just want to get that out there, establish that before we go to the next part. So if we tab into a DAW like Pro Tools first, you can see that I already have 2 tracks recording, just like before. One is my microphone and one is the music. Again, I'm not recording the music in OBS. I have that muted specifically. I'm just showing you the audio levels, and you can clearly see that the audio levels are different from my microphone over here. So the way I have it set up right now in Pro Tools is my input I have as microphone 1. I have this as a mono channel right now. So microphone input 1 is displaying in just one form. It's not right or left. It's just 1. Then for audio 2, I have the interface set to virtual channel in 1 2. So we are going. This is what we're choosing. Now, there was a little bit of confusion at one point on if this was actually giving me the virtual channel input or if it was giving me the virtual channel output. So just confirming we are getting the input, not the output. Let's see if this actually works going from virtual input 1 2 to 3 4. Again, we have all of the settings turned on, so we should be able to just in our computer settings switch Spotify from here to here and then change the input here, and we should be golden. It should still be working. So let's go to Spotify once again, changing that output. Let's go down to virtual channel out 3 4. Then let's go over, or just to show you, it's moved from up here down to here. Then if we go and change our input to 3 4, you'll notice it doesn't work. Now, Maono does provide a README document of sorts that comes with the folder when you download this software. So wherever that download folder ended up when you installed this program, go look for it. It pulls up just a PDF that you can view on your browser. I've got it right here. It's essentially instructions. One important thing to note is that this whole section here, you can also mix the audio of several inputs into a single output as shown above. Virtual channel out 1 2 are virtual channels. You can route audio from inputs to virtual channels. Third-party software, sorry, this was the main important thing. Third-party software can receive the audio from virtual input device, virtual channel in 1 2. That is the only virtual channel that DAWs can receive. As you guys saw, let me get this back out of the way. So, for example, let's also change our settings down to change it to loopback. Where is loopback? Right here. Again, just for consistency's sake, we'll change this one as well, even though we know that's not how that works. Let's minimize that. It's now down to our loopback. It's going out loopback. If we change our input to loopback, nothing. No thing is going on here. So it truly only works if we do out 1 2. Let's just bring that back to default. Pull this bad boy back up. We're good. We've seen that it is successfully going in virtual channel 1 2. So then if we change our interface, like our input back to interface virtual channel 1 2, look at that. It's magically back. I don't know why you can only use virtual out 1 2. It's a little weird to me. I'm not going to lie. It's a little weird. But it's important to note that is the only one you can do it with. And if you didn't read this document because you figured, I'll just watch a YouTube video or I'll just figure it out, you would never know. Well, granted, I'm putting that info in this YouTube video. So if you watched this YouTube video, you would know. But it's interesting that they hide that on the, or not hide, but it's interesting that it is only mentioned on the last page of the instructional README that most people who download software don't look at. I can appreciate like putting it there in the first place, making sure that people are aware, but I feel like it shouldn't be in the second to last section of the README and nowhere else. So that is just about everything I was able to learn or teach myself about this software. And I think that this should help most of you with 99% of use cases with utilizing this software for your content creation. I'm going to be completely upfront with you guys, like I was in the beginning of this video. I am not an expert. I was not trained on this software. There is a good chance that someone out there knows the software better than me and is probably typing in the comments right now, pointing out a few mistakes that I've made along the way of this video. To that guy, if you make a better instructional video than this, I will pin it in the top comment. Like, genuinely, the point of this video is to help people understand this software. So if I find out that someone does it better than me, I want to shovel people to you. So hopefully this was a good enough resource for most of you out there. I'm sure things will change. I mean, my experience with this differs from the early reviewers who went over these things with their experiences. So there is a good chance that this continues to develop, and maybe in a few months this isn't a perfectly up-to-date video. There might be more, like the interface might look different. They might make changes. God, I hope they make some changes with this whole thing in general. Like there's a few things with the interface itself that I would very much like to be improved upon, but that is neither here nor there. You are watching the routing center video, not the interface review video. Clearly, it's not 100%. I think there are room for improvements. I think there is plenty of room for improvement, but I think the concept here is really cool, and I do hope that Maono continues to develop this to eventually be like a really good, really useful program.